The truth is a complicated business. In fact, it turns out that the truth is so complicated, it often isn't even the truth. We're all partial to a good story, and when a story's good enough, it can easily trump the facts. So much of what we think we know needs a thoroughly good fact check. Here's 10 more everyday things that prove your life is a lie. Number 10. Van Gogh didn't cut off his own ear. Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh was famously mad. The height of his madness, we're often told, is the day he became so angry after a fight with fellow painter Paul Gauguin, he decided to cut off his own ear. Charmingly, Van Gogh then strolled to his favorite brothel and presented the severed ear to a prostitute, who presumably would have preferred flowers. So the story goes, but is it just a story? Art historians Hans Kaufmann and Rita Wildegans have mined the letters of Van Gogh and Gauguin and believe the most famous act of self-mutilation in history is a cover-up for the fact that Gauguin, a fencing ace, cut the ear off himself during a fight between the two. The argument between them is known to have taken place close to the brothel, so that may help explain Van Gogh's otherwise baffling bloodstained visit to a prostitute. Surely it's the more plausible story. Number 9. The Declaration of Independence wasn't signed on July the 4th. Every year, Americans celebrate Independence Day on July the 4th, but they're celebrating the wrong day. Documents aren't official until they're signed, sealed, and delivered, and the slothful founding fathers didn't get around to putting pen to paper until nearly a month later, the 2nd of August. The Second Continental Congress met in Philadelphia on the 1st of July, 1776, to begin discussing the document, and Congress voted through the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, hence the date of celebration. But no official document was signed until the following month, and lawyers will tell you that's a loophole you could drive a bus through. In fact, two of the delegates, John Dickinson and Robert R. Livingston, never found time to sign the document at all. If Britain finds a good enough lawyer, perhaps they can prove America never became independent at all. Number 8. Blackboard chalk isn't made of chalk. We all know our teachers lied to us, but did you know that they lied to you every time they told you to go up to the blackboard and write something in chalk? Blackboard chalk isn't made of chalk. It's made from the powder of a rock called gypsum, which is known as the rock nobody knows. For reasons that should be pretty self-explanatory, given the fact that we all thought it was chalk. Chalk and gypsum share many similarities. They both contain calcium and oxygen, and form from mineral deposits in the sea, but the presence of sulfur in gypsum distinguishes it from chalk. Chalk would be perfectly good for writing on blackboards, but gypsum is heavily mined, and ease of availability is the main reason it has seriously encroached on chalk's territory without receiving any credit. It's also worth pointing out that most blackboards aren't actually black. They're green. Your teacher lied to you twice in one breath. The reason for green blackboards is simple. Studies have revealed that the color green relaxes our eyes and prevents fatigue. Number 7. A penny dropped from the Empire State Building won't kill you. It turns out that this urban myth really is a myth. A belief in the power of pennies to cause head trauma is understandable. After all, we all watch big sporting events where moronic fans hurl pennies at officials and players and occasionally draw blood. What would happen if that same penny accelerated all the way from a skyscraper? Not very much is the slightly disappointing answer. Louis Bloomfield, a physicist at the University of Virginia, used wind tunnels to test the theory and found that pennies reach a terminal velocity of only 25 miles per hour thanks to their non-aerodynamic shape and the drag force of air against them. Bloomfield notes that at that speed, a penny would only glance off you, though if a penny was to somehow fall on you in a vacuum, it would be a slightly different matter. With air resistance, removed pennies could reach 200 miles per hour, but still wouldn't drill through your skull. Ballpoint pens are the ones to look out for, according to Bloomfield. Because of their shape, they can cut through the air like an arrow and could chip the sidewalk or punch into wood. Perhaps New Yorkers should invest in Kevlar hats. Number 6. Humpty Dumpty wasn't an egg. Listen carefully to this rhyme. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. At no point in the rhyme is an egg mentioned. Why then is Humpty Dumpty presented as an egg whenever he appears on screen, as for example in Puss in Boots? It's certainly true that an egg would be pretty tough to put together again if it fell off a wall, but so would anything if it fell off a big enough wall. And why would the king's horses and king's men be so concerned about a broken egg that they wanted to restore it to pristine condition? Let's face it, the egg theory has a lot of, holes in it. It seems more likely that the tale of Humpty Dumpty refers to a cannon that was blown off a wall during the siege of Colchester in 1648, or is a metaphor for the death in battle of King Richard III. Both events would have involved the king's horses and men, but no eggs. Number 5. Edison didn't invent the light bulb. Thomas Edison was one of the world's greatest inventors. So great, he even gets the credit for things he didn't invent. The first light produced through electricity appeared in 1806, over 40 years before Edison was born. Englishman Humphrey Davy was the intrepid scientist who invented the arc lamp by triggering an electric spark between two charcoal rods. Unfortunately, the arc lamp was so bright it was impractical for most purposes, though it was used in lighthouses. Edison's defining contribution to electric lighting was to solve the problem of how to produce light through electricity without either blinding homeowners or melting the bulb. He did so by stretching out carbonized threads that would come to be known as filaments until they could burn safely for up to 600 hours. Edison perfected and popularized electric lighting, but he didn't invent it. Number 4. Newton didn't get hit on the head by an apple. History's most hilarious eureka moment never happened. There is something intrinsically amusing about a great scholar coming up with a landmark theory of gravity after being pinged on the head by a falling apple. But unfortunately, there is no evidence that an apple ever hit Sir Isaac Newton on the head. The apple anecdote comes from a quote by Newton's friend, William Stukeley, who recalls sitting beneath an apple tree in Newton's garden when he told me he was just in the same situation as when formerly the notion of gravitation came into his mind, occasioned by the fall of an apple, as he sat in a contemplative mood. You'll note that at no point in this anecdote does it specify that the apple hits Newton on the head. It just reassures those of us intimidated by intellectual genius that even brainiacs get punked by nature. Number 3. C-3PO's leg was silver. Ask anyone to describe C-3PO, arguably the most famous fictional robot in the world, and they'll say something like, that annoying gold robot from Star Wars who talks all the time and has an unrequited love for R2-D2? It just goes to show that the truth hides in plain sight. Open your eyes, people. In the original Star Wars trilogy, one of C-3PO's legs is silver below the knee. No less a source than Anthony Daniels, the actor who plays C-3PO, confirmed it, and also confirmed that even people on set failed to spot the silver leg. Even the stills photographer John Jay came up to me one day and said, "Why are you wearing a silver leg today?" Daniels recalled. He also notes that the silver leg caused problems when filming, as it acted like a mirror and reflected the surroundings. Presumably, this is why J.J. Abrams got rid of the silver leg for the new movies. C-3PO no longer has a silver leg, but he did. Number 2. Humans didn't evolve from chimpanzees or apes. Charles Darwin famously sat on his theory of evolution for 20 years, afraid of the uproar it would cause in society if he was to trace human lineage back to a time when we resembled apes. You'll be relieved to hear that humans did not exactly evolve from apes or monkeys. However, we do share a common ancestor with them. According to scientists, this common ancestor lived between 5 and 8 million years ago before splitting off into two new directions. One path led to modern humans, and the other to gorillas and chimps. This in turn means that this monkey-to-man drawing we're all so familiar with is actually not an accurate illustration of Darwinian evolutionary theory. To be correct, the creatures to the left of the fully developed Homo sapien should consist of other ancestors that led to humans, but not monkeys or gorillas. That's just wrong since we never evolved from them. There is also the problem that scientists view evolution as a complex process characterized by random events, instead of a ladder of predictable progress like the graphic suggests. The misleading image has likely prevailed because it is simple to understand. Those PG Tips adverts where chimps sit around drinking tea aren't based on historical evidence. Number 1. Walt Disney's signature wasn't Walt Disney's signature. Walt Disney has one of the most famous signatures in the world. Disney movies are watched by millions and begin with that famous curly signature, which also doubles as the Disney logo. The handwriting does not, however, belong to Walt Disney. Don't believe me? Perhaps you'll believe handwriting experts who've compared Disney's signature on legal documents with the one on Disney films and found obvious differences. It appears that Walt's signature was embellished by Disney artists to create a more striking look. The signature is actually by Hank Porter, Walt's assistant who worked in the promotions department and was one of the few people authorized to sign Walt's name at the studio. And sign he did, thousands of times. And that wouldn't be the first time Disney has taken credit for work that wasn't his own. Disney's most iconic character, Mickey Mouse, was never drawn by Walt. The founder of Disney sketched out ideas for the character, but it was Disney animator UbiWorks who drew the original Mickey Mouse.